Yo, what's going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today. You can't see me today because this video is being edited and you're going to be looking at the prospects up in this NBA 2024 draft. But this is my official final NBA mock draft. Now, it is going to be a little bit different from the one I made earlier this week. The one earlier this week is just some stuff I would do, some considerations that I would make, and a little bit of projection of what teams might be expecting. But this one's going to be a little bit more probably realistic with some of the stuff that is going to be done in terms of what I'm going to project. And that all is going to start obviously at the top with the Atlanta Hawks. And the Atlanta Hawks, obviously, if you look at the Atlanta Hawks, I think their best fit is obviously Alexander Sarr. We talked about that. It makes the most sense to pair Trae Young and DeJounte Murray and all of them with Alexander Sarr. But from my understanding, Alexander Sarr has not even tried out or worked out for the Atlanta Hawks. Zachary Ricochet has. Now, when you think about it, it's probably not a good sign that Alexander Sarr has not even worked out with them. Because you look at it, they probably need a big. Clint Capella, he might be gone. Bruno Fernando, I don't trust at all. Onyeka Okongwu, he's all right, but there can be an upgrade there. You need a power forward. You need power forward depth. You need wing depth, but I think you need more power forward depth because I don't mind an AJ Griffin, a DeAndre Hunter, or a Sadiq Bey. You have Jalen Johnson, but that's really your only power forward, and you can argue he can even play small forward. So I would have, if it was me selecting, Alexander Sarr would have been the guy. However, it does seem like Zachary Ricochet is going to be number one. Now, we are going to select Zachary Ricochet for the Atlanta Hawks. And obviously, I'm on Fanspo doing this while you guys are just watching the post edit. But Alexander Sarr is now on the table for number two, which makes things interesting because I was talking about, well, if Ricochet makes it past one, there's a chance he can make it past two, with Reed Shepard being an option for the Wizards. With Alexander Sarr making it two, I don't think there's much of an option. I don't think there's much of an option here for the Wizards because, yes, Reed Shepard is an interesting prospect to become the true point guard of the team and move on from letting Jordan Poole being the primary ball handler and move Jordan Poole to that secondary ball handler that can play off ball, get open, just worry about scoring rather than facilitating. But when you got a big man up there, an immediate upgrade over Tristan Vukovic, and if you even bring back Marvin Bagley, Rashawn Holmes, or Ian Mahinmi, it doesn't really matter. It's an immediate upgrade. You're thinking about Alexander Starr will be starting day one on this roster. A very bad roster if you think about it. Outside of Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, it's a really, I think every spot's really available to be taken, honestly. Maybe not. Actually, I do want to go back on that. Bilal Coulibaly and Deni Avdija, I think they have pretty solidified roles. And then Corey Kispert off the bench is another solidified role. But really, wing was the thing that I was like, maybe that's what would lead them, because they do have some decent small forward depth. I was like, maybe that'll lead them towards Reed Shepard. But ultimately, with the second pick, I think it's got to be Alexander Sarr. Alexander Sarr is just too good of a talent to pass up. Can play the center, can play the power forward if you need him to, if you are that high on Tristan Vukovic. But ultimately, Alexander Sarr, too good of a talent. You're going to have to pass up on Reed Shepard if that's the case. Next, we get to the Rockets. The Rockets are they're going to be smiling from ear to ear because they did not know if Reed Shepard would get to them. Like I said, I think the Wizards are a potential Reed Shepard team. Don't hear too many people talk about it, but Reed Shepard fits the bill here for the Rockets. He's going to be a backup for Fred VanVleet year one. Obviously, they might move on from Jalen Green at some point. I don't think that's going to be this year. But you're looking at a 6'1", they list him as a shooting guard, but he's going to play point guard in the NBA. He averaged, I believe, 4.5 assists last year. Yeah, 4.5 assists last year at Kentucky. He's a guy that makes a lot of sense in terms of coming back and being the backup to Fred VanVleet, who has 2 years on his deal. So by the time Fred VanVleet's deal is up, then you're looking at Reed Shepard potentially being that guy to move in and become the long-term starting point guard for the Rockets. So Reed Shepard here at 3. So 1, 2, and 3 kind of a little bit consensus. of as to what's going to happen at this point in time. Then we get to the Spurs. I still really like the idea of Donovan Clingan and Victor Wembanyama being on the same team. Victor would obviously play the power forward. Donovan Clingan would be playing center, and nobody would score. But realistically, is that a smart idea? I don't know. I was just having some fun with my last mock draft. Now, the realistic thing to sit here and say is that they would go point guard. Trey Jones is okay, but there's definitely potential to upgrade. Obviously, they do pick again later in the first round at pick 8, but ultimately, I think Stephon Castle being there, you want a guy that can play both ways. You want a guy that can complement, not necessarily take away from Victor Wembanyama. So maybe a Rob Dillingham wouldn't be as highly considered here because Rob Dillingham, I think, is going to be best when he has the ball in his hands. Whereas Stephon Castle, yes, I know he wants to go somewhere and be the guy in terms of the starting point guard, which he will be here in San Antonio, but he has had experience at UConn taking a step back and letting the players around him do well. And I think ultimately this is just going to be a situation where it might not make Stephon Castle the most happy, but the Spurs, it just makes too much of sense. They're going to disregard his wishes of being the guy on a team, and they're just going to end up taking the best player available, the best fit for them. And Stephon Castle, to me, is that because he plays both ways. He complements, he doesn't take away from Victor Wembanyama. He'll know when to score, he'll know when to delegate stuff to Victor. Obviously, they've had some problems over the last year of Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson just getting in their own rhythm and kind of disregarding Victor. I don't think Stephon Castle will be that guy, even though he says he wants to be a bigger part of the offense. I don't necessarily think he will end up being that kind of guy at the NBA level. I think he will take a step back if need be to let Victor do what Victor does. And Stephon Castle, obviously, defensively, probably the best point guard in the entire class. So Stephon Castle there at 4 makes sense to me. Then we get to 5. 5 is an interesting spot now if you are the Pistons, because Matas Buzelis is there, which I think is a very good sign for them. Dalton Connect is there, another guy that could fit in there. You might see them even go a little bit bold and be one of the teams to take a guy that maybe some people are going to let slide a little bit. And I think this might be where I'm gonna have my first kind of shock, not really a huge shock, but a little bit of a shock in terms of this mock draft. I'm gonna have them find their power forward in this class in Tajane Saloon out of France. Now, I know probably not the popular option. They probably would want to take Matas Buzelis, or maybe even a guy like Cody Williams here. But I'm gonna make a bold prediction that we're gonna see Tajane Saloon go fairly early in the lottery and find a role on a team that lacks a power forward, lacks a true stretch big in the Pistons. So Tajane Saloon, congratulations, you're number 5. Next, we have the Charlotte Hornets up, and the Charlotte Hornets, they're tasked with some difficult decisions here. Mark Williams, I like. Nick Richards, I like. Could this be a spot for a trade? Because Donovan Clingan's sitting there. Donovan Clingan is sitting there. Is this a spot a team trades up? Maybe. But I think when you look at this roster, when you look at the Hornets, I don't think you should risk moving down a few picks and missing out on a given. This team is very, very, very bad. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller are their guys. Miles Bridges might be on his way out. They don't really have much power forward help. They do have some up-and-coming centers that maybe are worth something. They have Nick Smith, who they got last year. They have Trey Mann, who's maybe something. But a lot, I would say, really, if you're them, you're looking for a guard or a forward to really come in and be an immediate impact player, because it is that bad there that I don't even think there is much time to wait and really rely on the upside, because realistically, I don't really know what this team even is on paper. So that's why I think the easiest and the most simple option for them is Dalton Connect. I think Dalton Knecht will not make it much further, so they will ultimately decide to take Dalton Knecht here at 6 just to ensure they get their guy. Then we get to the Portland Trailblazers. The Blazers are on the clock, and I think they do pick again here soon. Could this be where we see a trade down? Could this be where we see a trade down? Because I do think some of their targets are going to be on the board. And a team like the Grizzlies could do it. We're going to have them trade with the Grizzlies. Is it that realistic? I don't know, but I feel like there needs to be some trades. So the Grizzlies are going to get the 7th overall pick for the 9th overall pick. And they'll also throw in the 39th overall pick. And that's because the Blazers expect one of their 2 remaining guys in Matas Buzelis, actually 3 remaining guys, Matas Buzelis, Ron Holland, and Cody Williams, will make it to number 9. So they will be comfortable trading with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are going to be trading up, making that move. And the Grizzlies are trading up to draft Donovan Clingan, move Jaren Jackson over to power forward. There's a lot of power forwards there, a lot of small forwards there. But Jaren Jackson, not necessarily a true center in terms, I mean, he's tall enough to be, but you probably want him to play that power forward, doesn't really love banging around with the bigs. So Donovan Clingan can be that guy, be their new Steven Adams there in Memphis. So there we go. Donovan Clingan is now a Memphis Grizzly. They traded up just a few picks. Didn't have to give up too much besides their early second-round pick to get him. The Spurs are now up, and the Spurs are in an interesting situation because they already drafted Stephon Castle. They got their guy there in terms of their point guard. Now, this next pick is interesting because I think they could go forward, and that's pretty much it. But who do they want to go? They got their point guard. This could be another situation of trading down. And I am going to trade down back-to-back picks. And a team that I know has explored some ideas of moving up, they will be moving up. The Chicago Bulls, my Chicago Bulls, are going to move up to the 8th pick. Now, in this trade, I assume there's more than just the 11th pick in this being traded. Probably a next year pick. Maybe a second rounder next year, or maybe this is how you offload Zach LaVine. I don't know, but I do think the Bulls will be aggressive in trading up if the board falls the way it does at number 8 because Matas Buzelis, Cody Williams, and Ron Holland are all on the table. Now, sitting here at number 8, you get your option. Chicago kid Matas Buzelis. Ron Holland is on the table. Cody Williams is on the table. You want one of those guys if you are the Bulls. Now, for me, it's a very interesting. I feel like Cody Williams has a lot of upside, but if you're trading up for Matas Buzelis. Matas Buzelis here at 8. He should not be here still. A lot of offensive upside. Very good player in high school, like I've been saying this whole draft process. Unfortunately, did not have a great year at the G League Ignite. So he's going to slide a little bit further than maybe he should have, but I really loved his aggressiveness during All-Star Weekend, during that this generation versus that generation game or whatever it was, where they would pair some of the G League guys with the up-and-comers in the NBA on All-Star Weekend. And Matas Buzelis wasn't afraid, and I liked that out of him. So an offensive player that we know can kind of fill in that role for a potentially leaving DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. Now, is Zach LaVine included in that trade? What is all included in that trade? I'm not sure, but I am going to have the Bulls trade up in that one. So the Bulls are now drafting 8 with Matas Buzelis. Next, we have the Blazers sitting 9. And the Blazers got to be happy. They traded down. They gained some more draft capital. Early second-round pick is going to be a player that can contribute this year. But the Blazers still get the guy I would have had them take at 7. Cody Williams, to me, just screams like a perfect fit alongside Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe. He's going to be a very good defensive player at a very young age. He's 19 years old, and I think he'll probably be one of the better defenders on the team next year. Big, lengthy arm span. The only question is, will he be aggressive enough to be an offensive player at the next level? A team like the Blazers that is working on developing Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson to be elite offensive players already does not have to necessarily rely on Cody Williams to go get 15, 20 points a game. They can rely on him to maybe get 12 and just really focus defensively on being that guy. So the Blazers makes a lot of sense for me for Cody Williams. Next, we have the 10th pick, which is the Utah Jazz. Now, I love floating this idea around that the Jazz should just go Rob Dillingham to replace Jordan Clarkson. I really love that idea. There's part of me that think they could go a guard because they might not bring back Colin Sexton. Kira Lewis is not a guy that I think is a lock in. Jason Preston, Chris Dunn, not guys I think are locked in. Johnny Juzang, Taylor Horton Tucker, not guys I think is locked in. Keontae George is really the only guard there that I see as being that great of an option. But to me, you're looking at a team that's running Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Walker Kessler. And obviously, Lauri Markkanen's running the 3. Not ideal. Maybe you want Walker Kessler coming off the bench, run Lauri Markkanen at the center. But Ron Holland makes some sense here with your ability to stretch the floor with Lauri Markkanen and John Collins. Ron Holland, I feel comfortable taking here for the Jazz. He's not going to be able to shoot and score right away. It's going to need some development if it does happen, but defensively, he will be ready to compete. He'll bring energy, very athletic kid, a very interesting prospect there to add to the Jazz. So Ron Holland there to the Jazz is where I have him going. The Spurs, they took Stephon Castle, and now they're back up. And the Spurs, obviously, I think the Spurs really, I think they should be looking probably at that power forward or small. I think they should be looking to add a wing. Maybe a shooter within the system. And I don't love any of the guys here that can do it. I mean, I really like the idea of Devin Carter going there, but Stephon Castle just went there. Rob Dillingham, I don't think he's really a fit there. Could this be a situation where we're going to take somebody a little bit early? And I think it might be. I think this is kind of the late lotto is where this kid's range comes in play. We're going to go, I think it's Kello Ware, or I think it's Kyle Filipowski. I'm going to say Kyle Filipowski. I think he's a little bit better of a passer. But Kyle Filipowski will be joining Victor Wembanyama. He'll be joining Victor Wembanyama. I obviously know they have Jeremy Sohan there, but he can either back up Jeremy Sohan or push Jeremy Sohan to the bench. But Kyle Filipowski will be joining Victor Wembanyama there at 11. Then we get to the Thunder. The Thunder, another team that I think could just be waiting and willing to make a trade. And I actually am going to have them willing to make a trade. And they're going to make a trade. I don't necessarily know what the exact package is going to look like. And I'm not going to bring up the trade machine either. We're going to do the Pelicans. The Pelicans are going to be trading Brandon Ingram. Yes, Brandon Ingram to the Thunder. No, do I think that's a good idea? Do I think the Thunder would take Brandon Ingram? They got a lot of people to pay. Gordon Hayward, huge deal. Huge deal, but they're getting rid of Gordon Hayward. Yeah, why not? Why not? Brandon Ingram. This is my mock draft. You know what? Why not? Brandon Ingram and the 21st overall pick to move up to number 12. And number 12 is going to end up being Rob Dillingham. I know you're looking at me like, why do they need Rob Dillingham? They have CJ McCollum and Jordan Hawkins. CJ McCollum is not getting younger. You're going to need to start thinking about after that. Jordan Hawkins is not stopping me from drafting a guy like Rob Dillingham who could potentially be that guy for a team, that offensive scorer. Now, I think Rob Dillingham's best is probably a Jordan Clarkson-like role off the bench, but I think the offensive intrigue there, kind of like Kobe White initially, who was at one point a very valuable six-man that has turned into a very good offensive starter. Rob Dillingham can be that. So Rob Dillingham here to the Pelicans is going to happen. Now, you might be shocked, but that's what I'm going to have happen. Now we get to the Kings. The Kings, they just re-signed Malik Monk. They obviously have Davion Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Keon Ellis, Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes might not be on the team to start next year, but center is what I would recommend this team do. And obviously they have Sabonis, so it makes no sense to go Edey. It makes no sense to go Yves Missi. I think it's got to be Kel'el Ware here at 13 for the Kings without Filipowski on the board. Then we get to pick 14. The Blazers, obviously, they took Cody Williams last time around. They picked up that second-round pick and still got their guy. Now I think the Blazers are kind of in the luxury of just finding a guy that fits into a little bit of a process here to be made. And you're looking for a guy that is not necessarily a finished product, because a lot of your team isn't going to be finished product. You're going to probably want to move on from Jeremy Grant. You're probably going to want to move on from Anthony Simons. You're going to probably want to find a little bit of a risk that can maybe play power forward. And I don't know if there's a guy here at super great value for them to play power forward. So for the second time in this class, I'm going to have the Blazers trade down yet again. And they're going to be trading down to the Toronto Raptors at 19. And the Toronto Raptors are going to give up pick 19 and do I want to give them pick 31? We'll give them pick 31 for the sake of this. The Blazers are just picking up second-round picks. We're going to trade it. We're going to think about it later. And the Raptors are trading up to take, I thought they were going to go point guard to begin with, and Bug Carrington, who is one of the guys I think they could go to, or Isaiah Collier. But with Devin Carter being there when they're selecting, we're going to go Devin Carter, a guy that I think is going to be very energetic, very good beside Scotty Barnes and them, can shoot the ball at, I believe, a 38% clip, plays both ways, a guy that is very interesting to me, Devin Carter. The Miami Heat are up. The Miami Heat, I think they are going to add some guard depth, some shooters, and the guy that I think is the best fit is sitting there, Jared McCain. He's going to be able to play there. I don't view him as a point guard. I view him more as a shooting guard. But they've ran Tyler Hero at point guard. They've ran everybody at point guard, it seems like, on the Heat. And obviously, you know that you all know that Spoelstra is going to get the best out of anybody. And Jared McCain, one of those guys that can play within the system, can hit shots, can be a big-time scorer, even if you put him off the bench. So Jared McCain is a very good contributor there for the Heat at 15. The 76ers are now on the clock. Obviously, their team consists of Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and that's pretty much it. I don't really love Tobias Harris here. I don't really love the guard depth here. I don't really love the forward depth here. I mean, Nicholas Batum's playing really crucial minutes. This is a team that would benefit off of just getting a guy that can play right now, because you're trying to be in a championship window. And there's one guy here that makes sense to me. He can play small forward. He can play power forward. It's Tristan da Silva. It makes a lot of sense. You can put him alongside Joel Embiid. He's ready to come in, start right away, push Nick Batum off the roster, since Nick Batum's getting up there in age, and you no longer have to rely on Nick Batum. So congratulations, Tristan da Silva, as the 16th pick. The Lakers, I really love the idea of the Lakers getting Zach Edey. Zach Edey is on the board for the Lakers. I do think they need a center, because I'm not in love with anybody they have. I do think Anthony Davis is more of a power forward. Obviously, they have a lot of power forward depth, or just forward depth in general, with Christian Wood, Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura. I don't really love Taurean Prince, but he's playing there for them. You might lose LeBron James in the offseason. Who knows? But I think really you're just going to figure out that you got to put AD at the power forward, which means you got a spot opening up at center, at least not even if it's not starting center, backup center, and you have the spacing on the team. You know how to get the big man the ball, and Zach Edey could be that. You don't necessarily need him to be a spacing center. So Zach Edey goes there to the Lakers at 17. Then we have the Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic. an interesting team. I think that they are pretty well filled out, actually. Power forward, obviously, I think is pretty much set. Paolo and Jonathan Isaac. Backup center could be a question. Um, Small forward, not really too much of a question for me. Franz Wagner's that guy. Jet Howard, we didn't get to see play that much, but we know he's a pretty solid player from his time at Michigan. Joe Ingles, an okay player. Chuma Okeke, okay player. Backup shooting guard, something I would maybe consider. But really, do you think that maybe there's a guy here that can add something that you guys already don't have? And I don't necessarily think Cole Anthony or Markel Fultz or Anthony Black are all guys that can't be replaced. And I think there is some point guards here that can at least challenge. And obviously, Cole Anthony can play shooting guard. Anthony Black can play shooting guard. Markel Fultz can play shooting guard. You can move around the guards, but add another guard into the mix, a guy that could potentially push to be that starter. And I don't really want to give them Isaiah Collier this early, but I think I will give them Bug Carrington. I do think I will give them Bug Carrington. So Bug Carrington is a guard that I really liked last year at Pittsburgh. He could do a little bit of everything. I do think there is some definite high upside there with Bug Carrington, but it's going to maybe take a couple years to get there, which is fine because you're playing on a team that's stacked right now in the Magic. So if you can develop him like we saw Jalen Suggs last year get really really better than what he was, then Bug Carrington's going to be a very good player for them. Then we get to the Portland Trailblazers at 19. They went Cody Williams. We were talking about them getting maybe a power forward here. And the power forwards they're not really all that great. They're not all that great in this class, to be honest with you. Do you maybe see yourself going a little bit more aggressive and going for a guy that maybe not necessarily a power forward, but he can play right away? And a guy like Kevin McCullough could be an interesting option. Do you maybe see yourself taking a little bit of a risk on somebody like Bobby Klintman? Maybe you view yourselves as just trying to run Yves Missy into something. To me, it's going to be interesting because I do think they need to add some forward depth, but I think you might see them double dip on a guard. Well, guard, but I view him more as a small forward. So you're drafting two small forwards. Obviously, you have Cody Williams there, but you could go for another one like Johnny Furphy. It's an option. But ultimately, I think I'm just going to gamble that we're going to see Tyler Smith go way, way earlier than expected. I think Tyler Smith is going to benefit off there not being a great class, and Tyler Smith with a lot of upside could be a guy the Blazers look at. Then we get to the Cavs. The Cavs, I don't even need to tell you, Yves Missy is the guy. I've pretty much mocked that every single time. I think they need a backup center desperately. Then we get to the Thunder. The Thunder did not get to take their guy last time around. They passed up on their pick. They added Brandon Ingram to their team. And I think here, you're probably going to see them just add another guard. I mean, obviously they had Caruso. They obviously had they have Shea. They obviously have Keson Wallace. They obviously traded Josh Giddey. But why would you be upset about that when you could get another big guard that could pan out in terms of playmaking? I think he's a better playmaker than he will be a scorer at the NBA level, in Nikola Topic. And that's what we're going to give them here. Nikola Topic is the guy there. Then we have the Suns. The Suns are up at 22. The best fit for the Suns is on the table, if you ask me. Tyler Kolek makes a lot of sense. I think they need a guy that's going to manage the game, and that is Tyler Kolek to a T. Tyler Kolek to the Suns at 22. The Bucks are now up, and the Bucks have an interesting task ahead of them. They could try to consider themselves people that can compete right away, Or they could probably go and maybe just get an heir apparent to Damian Lillard, because Damian Lillard, not as great of a season as you'd hope. Chris Middleton getting up there in age. Brook Lopez getting up there in age. Not necessarily a center I would be looking at to replace Brook Lopez at this point in time. It's tough because part of me just loves Isaiah Collier and just wants to go with him, but the other part of me wants to think smart and say, you know what, the Bucks are going to think that this is enough to compete. They're going to add another player that can compete right now, and I'm going to give them Terrence Shannon Jr. There at 23. Next, we got the Knicks. The Knicks are now up at 24. They have back-to-back picks. I think the Knicks are a team that you could see do some really weird stuff. I think one of their picks will probably be a guy that they know exactly what he is, and I'm going to give them Baylor Shireman. I think that is a good fit for them. He can play on the wing. They know he can come in off the bench and score and kind of lessen the load on Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, or Jalen Brunson. And then the other guy I want to think maybe we're going to look at something more upside wise. And this is where I'm going with DaRon Holmes. I know he is also another older player, but I think he's still got some room to grow as a big man. And does he play power forward or center at the next level? Probably power forward, but I do think there is some potential there to see what happens in New York. Then we get to the Wizards. Obviously, they took Alexander Sarr with the second overall pick. I think this is too good a value. Isaiah Collier sitting here should not be there. Isaiah Collier is going. I already kind of talked about how I thought they should address point guard if Alexander Sarr was off the board. Alexander Sarr is not off the board, and you got a guy that is probably top 5 before the end of, or beginning of this season. Then we get to the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, I feel bad for them. Because I think they would have took some of those point guards that we were talking about. And with the way the board's fallen for the Timberwolves, it's really tough to be honest with you. I think this is where you could see somebody reach a little bit and jump out of their draft or their predicted draft spot. Now, I do think they would probably go point guard here. I do think point guard would be the option. And we have seen in the last few years where some of these older point guards that you don't really expect to go high go late first round because they're a steady presence. And that is why I'm having Jamal Shead here right now at 27. The first time I've ever predicted Jamal Shead to go in the first round. The way this board has fallen, the Timberwolves, I think they're going to be prioritizing a backup point guard. Jamal Shead here makes some sense. Good defensive player, fits what they're already doing, and is a born natural leader that we saw last year at Houston. Then we get to the Nuggets. The Nuggets, I love to predict Baylor Shireman and Terrence Shannon to them. They're not there. They are not there. And I think they probably would be looking at a guy that can compete with Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, KCP might be on the move, so they're looking for some wings. Now, maybe a trade down would be ideal, but Jalen Tyson's sitting there. Jalen Tyson, I don't think will be sitting there if you trade down. And at this point in time, he's probably your best option. The Jazz are back up. They went Ron Holland last time around. And this time around, I think I might just have them. Jacoby Walter's there. You can't have Jacoby Walter fall the first round. He can be the heir apparent to what Jordan Clarkson is. And then the last pick is the Celtics. The Celtics have a little bit of a luxury here because they obviously just won the championship. Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard, really good players. Derek White, Jaylen Brown, obviously really deep team. When I'm looking at it, maybe you're looking at a big man. Not in love with any of the big mans. I don't really love Bobby Klintman. This might be where you see them replace Sam Hauser. I know that's a weird guy to replace, but Sam Hauser, I mean, he was okay, but if there's another upgrade, a younger upgrade, a potential better upgrade to become that bench scoring three-point shooter, Johnny Furphy here to the Celtics is the guy for me. So there we have it. There's my NBA mock draft. Let me know down below what your team ultimately looks like after the NBA draft. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.